Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Whispered Legends. I'm your narrator, Jacob. If you're listening to this late at night, you might want to keep the volume just low enough. Because tonight's story isn't about monsters hiding under beds. It's about something much worse. Something that didn't need to hide. Let's begin. People often describe a remote ranch in northern Utah as one of the strangest places in the world. Over the years, it's been linked to everything from unexplained lights in the sky to creatures that don't seem to belong anywhere. Some call it a hotspot for paranormal activity. Others think something much darker is tied to that land. The area itself, especially the Uintah Basin, has a long history of strange reports. Locals have talked about unusual sightings for generations. Lights moving silently across the sky. Figures seen at a distance that don't quite look human. Even stories of large creatures moving through the trees at night. For many people passing through, there's a quiet feeling that something about the land isn't right. At the center of all of this is a 480-acre ranch sitting roughly 100 miles east of Salt Lake City. Over time, it stopped being known by the name of its owners and instead took on a name tied to local belief and fear, Skinwalker Ranch. According to local traditions, the land was avoided by some Native American tribes who believed it lay in the path of something dangerous. Something that could change shape and move unseen. Before the 1990s, the ranch was owned by a family that later left suddenly in 1987. No clear reason was ever given. The property sat empty for years until 1994, when Terry and Gwen Sherman bought it. To them, it looked like the perfect opportunity. Terry worked with cattle, and the ranch had everything he needed: open land, privacy, and space to grow his business. The price was surprisingly low, but they didn't question it much at the time. They were focused on starting fresh. When they first arrived, they noticed something odd about the house. There were heavy locks everywhere. Not just on the outside doors, but inside too. Windows were secured with bolts. Large chains were attached near the entrances, clearly meant to restrain big animals like guard dogs. It felt excessive, but they brushed it off as paranoia from the previous owners. The contract also had unusual conditions, including restrictions on digging into the land. Again, they ignored it. At that point, it just seemed like quirks from the people who lived there before. What they didn't realize was that their first day on the ranch would set the tone for everything that followed. While unloading their truck, they noticed a large animal approaching from across the pasture. At first, it looked like a wolf. But as it got closer, they realized it was much bigger than any wolf they had ever seen. It moved calmly, almost casually, and didn't show any signs of fear. It stopped about 50 yards away and watched them. Its behavior was strange. It didn't act aggressive, but it also didn't act like a wild animal. When it came closer, one of the family members even reached out and touched it. For a moment, it seemed harmless. Then everything changed. The animal suddenly turned and attacked a calf in a nearby pen. It clamped onto the calf's head and tried to pull it through the bars. Terry rushed over, hitting it and trying to force it off, but it didn't react. He grabbed a gun and fired at close range. The shot should have dropped it immediately, but the animal didn't even flinch. No blood, no sign of injury. He fired again and again. Still nothing. Even after multiple shots, including one that clearly hit it hard enough to tear flesh away, the animal simply backed off and walked away. Terry and his son followed it, tracking it across the land. They reached a muddy area where its footprints were clearly visible. Then suddenly, the tracks just stopped. There was no sign of where it went. No continuation, no direction. It was as if the animal had disappeared. When Terry picked up a piece of flesh that had come off the animal, he noticed something disturbing. It didn't look fresh. It looked old and decayed. That was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, small but unsettling things started happening inside the house. Gwen noticed objects moving on their own. Groceries she had just put away would be back in bags. Items would disappear and show up later in random places. At first, she thought it was her memory. Then Terry experienced it too. Tools went missing and later appeared in impossible locations, like hanging high up in a tree. Soon after, they began seeing lights on the property at night. At first, they assumed it was someone driving nearby. But the lights didn't behave like vehicles. They moved silently and sometimes lifted off the ground and drifted away. As time passed, their cattle started disappearing. Terry would find tracks in the snow leading into open areas, only for them to suddenly stop. No signs of struggle. No sign of where the animals had gone. Then some of the cattle began to reappear, dead and mutilated. The injuries didn't look like they came from predators. There was no blood, and the cuts looked precise, almost surgical. The situation kept getting worse. Strange figures were seen near the house. Sounds came from underground, like machinery moving beneath the earth. Voices were heard at night, coming from nowhere. Large holes appeared in the ground with no dirt around them. Creatures were spotted moving across the land, some resembling known animals, others completely unfamiliar. At times, it seemed like something invisible was moving through the ranch. Livestock would react as if something was passing through them, even when nothing could be seen. Then there were the lights. Some hovered in the sky. Others moved quickly through the trees. Terry even witnessed what looked like an opening in the air, like a hole or portal, with a different sky visible inside it. Objects seemed to move in and out of these openings. But the most disturbing encounters involved glowing orbs. They varied in size and color, but the blue ones stood out the most. Being near them caused a strong sense of fear, something that felt unnatural. One night, Terry saw a blue orb near the tree line. His dogs reacted immediately and chased it into the woods. Moments later, he heard them cry out. They never came back. The next morning, all that remained of the dogs were burned, unrecognizable remains. That was the breaking point. The family had already lost cattle, sleep, and any sense of safety. They were struggling financially, and the constant fear was affecting everyone. Eventually, Terry contacted a local newspaper. Most people didn't take the story seriously, but it reached someone who did. A businessman named Robert Bigelow, who had an interest in investigating unexplained phenomena, offered to buy the ranch. The Shermans accepted without hesitation. By mid-1996, they left the property behind. Soon after, a team of researchers moved in to study the ranch. What they found would lead to even more questions and even more stories. Because whatever was on that land didn't leave when the family did. If anything, it was just getting started. Thank you for listening to tonight's story. If you enjoyed, please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And remember, not every shadow is empty, and not every voice in the dark is in your head. Good night, and stay safe.